Yeah, both of yous. Call this meeting of the Cartersville City Council to order. We'll start with an invocation by Councilwoman Pruitt, followed by our pledge, which is going to be led tonight by the Scouts out of Troop 25 out of the American Legion. If you'll please stand with me.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Lord, we come before you tonight with grateful hearts, thankful for the many blessings you have given to us all. Be with all of us tonight as we work to do what is best for our community and for the citizens of Cartersville. We ask for your continued guidance, love, and protection over us as we continue to seek to do what is right in your sight. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Keeling, if you please call the roll.
Carrie Hodge, Ward 1. Here. Jay Stepp, Ward 2.
Here.
Louis Tonsmeyer, Ward 3.
Here.
Lindsay McDaniel, Ward 4.
Here.
Diane Tate, Ward 5.
Here.
Lori Pruitt, Ward 6.
Here.
First item on our agenda is the approval of the council meeting minutes from October 6th. Council has had these well in advance of tonight. The chair will entertain any additions, edits, or motions.
Mayor, didn't see any additions or deletions. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously. We have a set of public hearings this evening. First readings, public hearings, no vote required tonight. The first one is text amendment application T11-02. Mr. Menino.
Sir Mayor, Council. First, I'm going to note that this particular case is related to the following case. And during the Planning Commission, we kind of got to discussing both of them intertwined. It'd be a lot easier if we can try to keep them separated. This case has been properly advertised as required. Text amendments do not require a posting, actually. And with that, back in 2010, we amended the city zoning ordinance, and in an attempt to try to encourage mixed use, we put a residential element into the commercial categories. With a special use, we now allow for the mixing of those particular uses, as long as you follow certain criteria. At the time when we did that, we put some extensive stipulations and regulations under the special use criteria. And what that did, that ended up restricting several of the commercial uses in the higher commercial categories. With that, Mr. Lewis has applied for a text amendment to amend the actual criteria for the special use, which allows the residential with the commercial. This went to public hearing before Planning Commission, and the city departments did review the application. With that, Planning Commission did recommend approval of this text amendment.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Menino at this point? Thank you, sir. I'll now open up a public hearing in reference to T11-02. Anybody wishing to step forward and speak either for or against may do so at this time.
My name is John Lewis. I live at 94 Blackfoot Trail, southwest Cartersville, and I am the applicant, so I guess I'm here to, if y'all gonna ask questions now or later, but anyway, I hope you approve it because, or maybe I don't hope you approve it, I'm not sure which. Anyway, hopefully this will work out fine, but we're not asking for a whole lot. We just want to mix the commercial and the residential. It's already zoned commercial, so we're just trying to mix the two and find a use for the building.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wishing to step forward for or against may do so at this time. And seeing none, I'll close the public hearing in reference to T11-02. Once again, this is a first reading. Council will take this up for consideration at our next meeting, and there will be another public hearing in reference to this text amendment application. Next item is SU 11-04.
Thank you again. This particular property has been posted and advertised as required, and the special use amendment that we just discussed is directly related to this application. Mr. Lewis has applied for a special use to allow the residential and the general commercial zoning category for a site located at the intersection of Cook Street and Irwin Street. The building there has been vacant for several years now, was rezoned to general commercial back, I believe, in 2003. There were some enumerated conditions that are already existing on the building. Now, the request, again, is to allow the mixing of uses, to allow a mixed-use type development. The individual departments did review this particular application. The fire department had several comments related to uses. With the amendment with the text amendment, they weren't opposed to if they were allowed the opportunity to take look at every request on an individual case-by-case basis when the applicant wants to mix residential and commercial. In this particular case, the fire department went through the list of allowed uses in general commercial. We sat down with Mr. Lewis and actually struck out some of the uses that the fire department didn't feel were, from a public safety perspective, felt like it probably would be best scratched. Planning Commission did hear this and did recommend approval with the list. There was a slight change on one of the uses. You may have received a copy of what that change was. It was based on some fire safety criteria. The applicant has met with the fire department and agreed to some additional fire safety criteria for that one particular use. And again, with that, Planning Commission did recommend approval with the list of uses that were scratched and a maximum of 49% of the building being allowed for residential, and that will still maintain 51 or a majority of the property used for the underlying general commercial category.
Any questions for Mr. Menino at this point? Thank you, Randy. I'll now open up a public hearing in reference to SU 11-04. Anybody wishing to step forward to speak either for or against may do so at this time.
I guess I'll come back up. I'm John Lewis, Blackfoot Trail, Cartersville. I've always gotten these two things confused, the two different sections, so I guess I spoke out of turn a while ago, but I wish you would approve it. And the fire department and I did get together, and the only issue we had was about truck and car rental and sales in that building, and the fire department agreed we could do that if we would build a 2-hour firewall between the residential and where the sales might take place. So that's no problem with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to step forward and speak either for or against may do so at this time. And seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on SU 11-04. Once again, council will take this up at their first meeting in November for another public hearing and a vote.
Mayor, I have a comment, if you don't mind.
You kind of put me on the spot. If I say no, I'm going to sound real ugly.
You don't mind.
Go right ahead.
No. Sir,
Now you go ahead.
I had an opportunity to walk through this building. I'm talking to my fellow city council members now. As you come across the South Bridge, you just see a big brick building, and it's been overgrown for some time. And I had an opportunity to walk through it. It's really interesting inside. There's skylights. That was interesting to me. You can't see that from Irwin or Cook. It's higher than you think. Mr. Stepp, during our work session, some things came up about surrounding. You're actually higher than you think when you come out that side door that we're looking at right there. Just a comment, I walked through it. It's a big empty building that has a lot of possibilities, but the lay of the land surprised me. The windows were better than I thought they would be, and the skylights were really good. So I could see more possibilities than I ever could coming across the South Bridge.
Okay.
Just a comment.
Thank you. Okay.
Question, what was in that building before it went down?
What was the
Empty.
previous use of that building?
Yes.
The last use that was in it, that closest end right there was, I think, Brady's Auto Repair, was the last tenant that was in there. Prior to that, it was some kind of textile operation.
Along the Candlewick spinning.
There's a huge furnace in there, a huge, amazing kind of a metal furnace. I don't know what that would be.
All right. Next item on our agenda is resolution for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council. Just about this time last year, you gave permission to apply for a Georgia Department of Natural Resources grant. This grant was for the design and construction of a canoe and kayak launch on the Etowah River at the right adjacent to the Highway 11361, the E.R. Bates Bridge, and we've gone through all the hoops, and we have been granted that grant, or approved for that grant, and the grant amount is $32,924. The project cost is right at $45,000. We have a cash donation commitment from the Coosa River Basin Initiative, and a commitment from Bartow County Public Works for the use of a track hoe to help us dig out the side of the river once we obtain all of our permits and everything. So I'm asking that you approve this resolution in support of accepting this grant award for City of Cartersville.
And you got the balance of this in your budget?
It is budgeted for this year, yes, sir.
Okay.
Any questions? If not, Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Continue on, Greg.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council. This next item is a memorandum of understanding from the Georgia Department of Transportation. Just about this time last year, we applied for a T grant, and it was for Pettit Creek Trail Phase 3. This project would complete the Pettit Creek Trail project, and it would connect our parks, from our Dellinger Park, Sam Smith Park, to our Clearwater Street Park, and to the baseball complex park. Therefore, completing a vision that was given by council in the early 2000 visioning sessions, and also in the 2007 2030 visioning session. This project is for approximately 7,800 foot of multi-use trail along Pettit Creek, and as well as 2,400 foot of sidewalk that will connect downtown Cartersville to this trail on Mission Road. This memorandum, this grant award is $860,000. This memorandum of understanding would allow they're asking for the City of Cartersville to pay for all preliminary design, engineering and design to see, and at that point in time, we would come back to council for other approvals on this. But again, it's $860,000 grant. The 20% match would be right at $172,000, but the budget, the grant budget is about $100,000 more than that. It's like $1.18 million. And if this is able to go forward, if we're able to obtain easement, we're able to obtain right of way, and we're able to move forward, this would not be in the budget. It would be in the, I guess, the 13-14 budget. So I'm asking for your approval of this.
You got the money to do the preliminary?
Well,
Preliminary stuff?
well, not in this year's budget.
Okay. But is that what we're agreeing to do?
It would be.
How are we going to fund that?
Well, we wouldn't, I can't answer that right now. We wouldn't start until, I guess, until July 1 of next year. I would submit it for next year's budget.
Okay.
Well, no, let me back up. Now, let me back up. I do have seed money in this grant.
Okay, that's what I
I do
thought.
have $25,000 in this budget for that. Thank you,
I didn't mean
sir.
to throw you a curve, but that's what I
Well,
was asking.
I
thank
don't know
you.
if you're gonna get Ed to come up here and strongly encourage
Yeah,
us to.
better hurry up. It's awful, yeah. I forgot my pleas that,
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question, Greg.
Go right ahead.
Greg, you took some of us out there to look at what is going on right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that phase,
that is phase two.
that's phase two? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Phase one was done, I really don't know what year. That was, Jerry Milam headed up that, and that is from that takes it from the Atco Village to the intersection of Irwin Street and Cassville Road. Phase two takes us, where it's taking us from Cassville Road to Mission Road. The next phase would take us from Mission Road to the Highway 11361 corridor. And
Well, what people can't see right now is it's great design. Those bridges are really beautiful back there, the trees are really pretty. I mean, that isn't visible from Mission Road or Cassville Road right now. But it's gonna be a great addition to our public safety building, because a lot of those men and women stay in shape.
It is, and it's, again, it's the, I have to thank our property owner for, for the donation of that easement. That is Jeff Self with Self Recycling. He was gracious enough to donate that to the city, that easement, as well as Mr. Dillinger donated a portion of that, of his property for that easement. But again, that is the second phase, and this would be the third phase.
But don't you agree it's great design? Don't you agree?
Oh, it is. It's a
Sorry,
wonderful.
people can't see it.
It's a good
I mean,
project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to clarify one more
Okay.
thing for me. So they're requiring us to do the preliminaries,
Yes.
and you do have it in your budget?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanna make sure I understood
He
that
said, sir.
Yeah, they all do.
right. Sir?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. It is.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? And if there are none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Greg. Bobby, you've got the next three, I believe.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This item has got a Part A and a Part B, actually. The Part A being the general services agreement between the City of Cartersville and Southland Engineering. We've requested this because we need to pre-qualify Southland to do miscellaneous engineering design work for us as projects come up, sidewalk projects, intersection improvement projects, trail projects, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have the manpower in-house to actually design these, so we go outside locally. And should you vote to approve Part A, which is the agreement, there's a task order number 1 that is the first, I guess, project that we want Southland to design for us, and it's a sidewalk sections on Highway 113 from approximately Terrell Drive out to Ingalls on both sides. It's a huge stopgap in that sidewalk section. We've had several folks request on both sides that we make those connections. So we would like to recommend both the agreement and task order number 1 for your approval. Funding for the task order number 1, total $12,950 to do that sidewalk design. 2007 splost under intersection safety improvements. E-Verify and Save are on file for this, for Southland.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Elliott on this item?
I have a question, but go ahead.
No, go ahead.
How does this impact our ability to get bids competitively for that kind of work?
It doesn't impact our ability to get competitive bids at all. What this basically saying is we now have an engineering firm on retainer, basically. When we don't want
Kinda
to.
like them.
Yeah, when we don't want to bid out a project, we know what this firm is going to do it for. If there's a project we want to bid out, or we want to bid out to make sure they're still being competitive, we can always bid out individual projects. It doesn't stop that at all. This is just basically putting an engineering firm on retainer who will be doing smaller projects, quick projects that you need to have working done, and that's pretty much what it is.
If there's an individual work order that is greater than $5,000, it would still come before us for approval.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Do we have other general service agreements within other departments with engineering?
Yes, the water department has one with, is it still JJ&G, or is there a different name now?
Jacobs.
Jacobs. The water department has one with Jacobs. The
Gas department's got one.
gas department has one as well. I forget who the company that's with.
Southeastern.
Southeastern. So it is common for the various departments to have these for their engineers on retainer, I should say.
And my original comments, and I was gonna commend Public Works and Bobby for using local. My question to you, I guess spinning off what Mr. Tonsmeyer just asked, was, well, from what I've seen, when we use a local firm compared to out-of-town firms in regards to engineering, it seems as though we're saving a good bit of money.
Tons.
Yeah.
Our local firms, their overhead is nowhere close to what the bigger firms are. I think we pretty much have led the way in using locals. And we know where they are, if we need them, and they do a good job.
So do we review the general service agreements under the other departments
Sure.
occasionally? Or
Sure.
do they just stay that way?
Sure. We reviewed the one with gas within the last year. You regularly have the opportunity to have input on the Jacobs one, not on individual projects. So yeah, you do. My question is, and we'll try to move on, is this the last chunk of sidewalk? Does it connect into the new piece where on 113?
Yes.
So you can actually walk full length?
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor, I've got a question about the project too, actually. Bobby, did you say both sides of West Avenue?
Yes.
I've had a lot of complaints about, there's a big ditch next to, right after you cross over Attaway, and that will take care of.
Yes.
That'll be pipe, that'll be a big pipe. That'll make a lot of difference right in there. The rest of that's pretty flat, isn't it? That's the one place.
Okay. All right, if there's no other discussion, Chair will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Go ahead. Bobby, please continue.
The next item, we solicited 4 price quotes on a dump body for the 1-ton cabin chassis that Mayor and Council approved about a month ago. We received 1 price back. I personally talked to all 4 vendors. They promised to price, but we only got 1. Ingram Truck Body in Ball Ground, Georgia, gave us a price of $6,795. We think it's a very fair price. In fact, Ingram has done just about every single truck body we've got in our whole building in the past. This is a budgeted item. I know it's only 1 price, but we're happy with it. We'd like to recommend approval. E-Verify and Save are on file. It is budgeted, and it's well under budget.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Continue, please.
We have a recycle truck in our budget. We solicited 6 vendors for prices after we sent specs out. We got price quotations from 3 vendors, 5 total prices. As your bid tab shows, the prices range from $163,492 to $179,995. In this particular case, the low bidder met every single spec we put together, $163,492. The cabin chassis is a Freightliner cabin chassis, which has dealers all over Atlanta. Body manufacturer is in Pennsylvania. They have a mobile service unit that travels the southeast. We know it's not local and it's not in the state, but we've looked at it, we've researched it. They're selling lots of trucks. They've been building this truck body since 1990. And they sent us one out to look at, and we like it. We'd like to recommend approval. E-Verify and Save are on file. We had $200,000 projected for the cost of this unit, and it surprised me.
In a good way.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? And if not, Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Mr. Porta.
Yes, Mayor and Council, part of the Main Street Gateway Beautification Project, we have to pay a couple companies, AT&T and Comcast, to take their cables and put them underground. You approved AT&T last year. Comcast has not been approved at the estimated cost of $45,858 to move their line underground. I recommend approval of this agreement.
Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. The successful return to the podium of Michael Hill.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council.
No, sir, and please.
Well, they got my goat earlier. The gas system is doing an improvement on the natural gas line at the corner there of North Tennessee Street and Nelson Street, and it requires special tools, services provided by sole source provider, S.J. Patterson. Cost for that $6,800. We're asking that y'all please to approve that.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Carter, you have the next 4 items, and I'll ask you to go through all 4 of these purchases, and I'll ask council to do this in one motion, and council, please stop and ask questions as we go along.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. In December of 2010, as you are well aware, we purchased and began the construction of 2 new fire apparatus for the city. Those apparatus now, the construction has been completed. They're located at our vendor that is in Forsyth, Georgia, for the final make work to be done on those trucks. We anticipate delivery of those apparatuses the 3rd week of November here within the city. In December, we elected at that point in time not to purchase equipment package through that truck. We decided to go to separate out the equipment packages and hope to find savings down the road, and that's exactly what we've been able to do. The equipment that you'll hear tonight, of course, is all NFPA compliant equipment and required for ISO and for the operation of these trucks. We sent quotes and bids out to 6 different vendors throughout this equipment package, and tonight I'm bringing to you 4 of 5 packages that you'll be seeing for the necessary equipment. All E-Verify, E-Save documents are on file for each one of these vendors. The first one that's coming before you tonight is for the self-contained breathing apparatus package. It's a total of 8 units. The low bid within this is American Safety and Fire for $41,080. This includes the SCBAs, the cylinders, and also the mask. And this will be the breathing apparatus for these 2 new apparatus. Any question on that item? The next one will be for the hose. For both of these fire apparatus, it's a total of 6,560 feet of hose, varying in length and also in diameter. Low bid on this will be Georgia Fire and Rescue for $19,683.68. The next item will be the nozzles and valves for these 2 apparatuses. The low bid here will be 10-8 fire equipment for $27,400.73. And the 4th one that I bring for you tonight is the thermal imaging systems. There were 2 quotes that were received back from vendors MES and Fireline. Fireline received the low bid here at $16,999 for 2 thermal imaging cameras for these 2 new apparatus. We respectfully request that you would approve these 4 purchases.
You'd mentioned earlier, too, by breaking these in pieces and,
yes, sir,
and not going with the truck vendor, that you were able to save money.
Yes, sir. And what we've did, and it does seem rather complicated to come up here with so many different packages, but we felt if we could throw the bids out there and be able, we put the stipulations on where we had the right to accept or reject any line item, that we were going to be able to craft these packages with the different vendors, because they all have certain specialties, and we were going to be able to get a lower price. And so far, we're we will be well below budget of this total package when we get concluded. I'll be bringing back to you in November the fifth and final package, which will be the hydraulic and extrication equipment, specialized rescue equipment. We're actually doing field testing right now to make sure that the equipment that has been quoted does meet our needs and our demands before we bring any final requests for that.
Remind us again where your trucks are going, the new trucks.
One truck will be replacing the rescue truck that's currently outdated, and the other one will be going to Station 4, the new MLK station, when it comes open.
Thank you.
Chief, I'm not even sure how to ask this question, but let me try. By breaking this out and not getting the truck completed and breaking it out like this, is someone checking, and I presume that would be you, that all of these pieces of equipment, even though ISO approves them, that they talk to each other, that they work together?
Oh, yes, ma'am. We actually have an apparatus committee that's made up of firefighting staff that actually works on these trucks, and I've allowed them to come in and spec, and they have brought to me the actual equipment that they need for the trucks, and we make sure that it all blends, works together, and we have our I's dotted and T's crossed on this, I promise.
My questions are far worse than yours. I've asked him about 20 times if it'll fit in the MLK station, and he assures me it will.
Yes, it will.
Well, I was even wondering about hose-to-hose fit. I mean, there's a lot of...
Yeah, but that's wrote up in the specifications. When I actually send out the quotes, it's down to the diameter, national standard thread. You know, everything is laid out for them, and, you know, I don't have that for you here just because it's just an overload of information.
And we do have warranties for what we need warranties for, I'm assuming.
Yes, and we also, any new equipment that is something that we would not be familiar with also includes on-site training for any of that type of equipment, if there's any differences from something we're currently using.
Any other discussion? If not, Chair will entertain a motion on all four of these items.
Motion to approve
Can you be specific?
all four of these items.
Thank you.
Second.
And I have a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Molinak, you've got the next item.
Mayor, Council, the Cartersville Water Department has requested Jordan, Jones, and Golding to provide us with a proposal for engineering services for the design, bidding, and construction services for a water main replacement project on Etowah Drive. This project will involve replacement of approximately 4,500 feet of 6-inch and 2-inch galvanized lines between League Street and Old Mill Road. It will also allow us to replace a number of fire hydrants which are currently out of service, and generally just remove a lot of pipes that cause us rusty water problems. The proposal from Jordan, Jones, and Golding is for an amount to not exceed $64,700. We feel this price is reasonable considering the scope of the project. It's to be paid for with the budget for capital improvements. Will be reimbursed later for with a bond issue for the construction of this project. I recommend approval of this contract.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
Just spinning off the conversation we had earlier in regards to local engineers, and then you said it earlier in the work session, and you said it again here today, that you feel as though the price is in the right area.
Yes.
What do you use to make that? And I know you know your job.
Well, it's the scope of the work, when you look at the number of sheets of drawings, the field work involved, the number of hours that are involved in the bidding process, preparation of the specs. We do a considerable amount of engineering on projects in-house at our department, and for any project that a local firm could design, we would probably do in-house. And so we go out of house for projects that are beyond the scope of what we can handle, or that because of the nature of the project, if it involves a lot of work in a state right-of-way under railroads where we need the liability coverage for the city, we would use a larger firm.
And how do you determine a local firm is not capable of doing this? We
work with the local firms on a regular basis. it's just a design experience.
I mean, do you have a list of criteria that puts you in that puts local businesses or outside local businesses more apt to take care of a job more than one than the other?
Generally, during the design review for developers, let's say, like on a subdivision project, we quite often have to, you know, explain how to construct the project, which, you know, you wouldn't do with a larger firm that has more experience on design.
And
So,
just to clarify too, when you get into more complex projects like your water plant or a sewer plant or something like that, or something that we would have in utilities, there are local firms that could go,
Right.
for instance, design a water plant for you.
Oh.
It's a lot more complex. Now, if we're talking about water and sewer lines, do you think that there are people capable of doing that?
and there would be, but like I say, a smaller project, we would probably design in-house. We've got a number of projects that we will be bringing to council here that, well, we recently did one for a sewer line extension on Martin Luther King Drive. We'll be replacing a number of other sewers in that area, that whole area up there. We'll be bringing a number of smaller projects in for that.
Price point wise though, you probably, if you were working off the cost of the project, if you could get the thing designed and inspected for somewhere around 10% of the project cost, wouldn't that be a pretty fair cost?
That's pretty fair
Just to give
cost.
council a benchmark, if you're looking at cost, that would probably be a.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just know that there's a lot of money that we spend a lot. You know, it's, you guys have got a lot of projects coming forward,
Right.
and it's always seems like there are big chunks of money going out, and I'm thinking, well, if any of that money could be spent locally, or the other thing is, just is there another firm that we could, you know, sharpen the pencil of JJ&G against?
And that is our plan. Like I say, we mentioned this earlier in the work session. This is a project that was essentially, the design was complete earlier. It got put on a shelf, waiting for funding. During that interim period, a number of the utilities we have to work around were relocated, so we're basically redesigning portions of it.
The thing we need to understand is, while you may want them to sharpen the pencil and maybe go with absolute low cost, all the things in the water and sewer system work. I've been in communities where they don't and where they fall apart when you start building them, and we don't ever want to get to the point where we cut it so short that we're actually buying a product or somebody doing the project that doesn't know what they're doing. Now,
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend, you know, going with a low price or just getting somebody to cut the price.
My
I'm just
point is
saying-
you got to balance against
Yeah.
that.
And that's one of the points with working with JJ&G. We've worked with them for a number of years. The designers we work with, I've worked with them on dozens of projects. They know how we like to work these. And also, like during construction, we do our own project inspection. They know what part our inspector, you know, is capable of covering. So we work well together. So you bring a new team in, it takes a while to get, you know, to where you can work together. And
if we can put local people to work, sure.
We have specific.
I just noticed that there's a lot of, you know, there's huge price differences, and I understand, but, you know, when we sit up here and we say that, look, we've used a local engineer, it doesn't have to be engineering, whatever it may be, and we're saving a lot of money. It's nice to know that when we sit down with people and they say, well, why are you not using, you know, it depends on if somebody's keeping up with it or not, how much money we're spending with JJ&G every year, looking at that and saying, well.
Let's not intermix public works with this.
But also, we would like the recognition for the engineering we do in-house, because we feel like we save the city considerable amounts of money on that. We put out quite a few water and sewer projects every year, designed in-house.
I do think the point you made, Ed, is a good one, though, regarding institutional memory, because the system is very complex. And having worked with them for such a long time, that was something I asked early on, and I felt comfortable knowing that they knew, oh, you know, in this year, we made this change and we did this, and it works this way, which in the long run also makes things continue to work smoothly, because they carry with them a knowledge base that would take quite a long time to get somebody else up to that same level of expertise.
Yes. We do feel like our approach brings the city the lowest cost for getting the level of service that our customers deserve.
Ed, did you say Lee Street to O'Mill?
Leek Street to Old Mill Road, and currently we have a number of fire hydrants in there that are actually out of service, and that's what prompted this design. We had some local residents who were concerned about that, and so we feel this is critical.
Where is the water line located? Is it in the middle of the street?
And that's a problem we have with a lot of the lines in these neighborhoods of the city. It's actually located in the street. Where possible, we're going to keep the new water main under the sidewalk, but there's a lot of competition for that area. There's already gas mains there, so we fit in where we can.
And we don't foresee any change orders this time.
It could happen, but basically, you pay for what you have to have, whether it's done by change order or whether you already have a unit price established. So,
I have one question. Do you use historical, I'm sure you do, historical in-house data so that when you get a price for an item of this type, you can compare it with your previous records and say that
yes.
in the ballpark?
Right.
Any other discussion?
I think we beat him up enough. I'm ready to
And that's second that, or?
Thank you, Ed.
make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. All right, we have a series of 3 public hearings regarding the Alcohol Control Board appeal. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Lovell to handle the proceedings.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, as y'all are aware, the Alcohol Control Board earlier this month had their hearing on 7 establishments that were charged with selling alcohol to a minor. These charges were on the basis of an undercover operation, one by the Department of Revenue and the other one by the City of Cartersville. As a result of those 7 hearings, all establishments either pled guilty or pled no contest to the charges. They were all imposed a fine of $2,500 and 3-year probation, which is the maximum recommended penalty for a first offense. That is, and it was a first offense for all the establishments. Pursuant to the Code of Ordinances, 3 of those establishments have filed an appeal to the mayor and council. They are not appealing their guilt or their pleas. What they are appealing is the amount of the fine and the length of the probation. The record from the Alcohol Control Board has been forwarded to y'all as part of your agenda. The memorandum submitted by the appellants are in your package, and a memorandum from the city as well. What you do in these hearings is basically y'all consider the record, which is before you, and then each appellant has the right to come before you and present an oral argument on why their particular issue should be reduced or addressed, however they want to. No new evidence is permitted at these hearings. We do have present Captain Stewart and Officer Pettifer, who were in charge of the undercover operation, are present if mayor and council did wish to clarify any points with them. The city does not plan to present any additional evidence or anybody here for these hearings. Basically, we will call each establishment up. Each establishment will have 10 minutes to present their oral arguments. If they wish to extend that time, they may request the mayor to do so. At the end of every public hearing, the mayor and council does have the right to vote and either modify or accept their punishment as recommended by the Alcohol Control Board. You also have the right to not make a decision until 30 days from today's date, which would mean if y'all choose to exercise that either on your November 3rd or your November 17th council meeting, you would actually enter your decision with respect to these 3 appeals that are before you. You can enter it tonight, and you can take no action at all and just enter your orders at a later date. If there are no other questions about the general procedures that we will follow, I will sound each appeal and have them come forward and present their oral argument. You do have the right to ask them any questions that you wish during their presentations, and questions that you ask and the time they spend answering them do not count towards the 10-minute limitation. We do accept those, and I will be, as usual, keeping that time.
Okay, I have a question of Mr. Lovell. Mr. Lovell, when you say first offense, do you mean first offense underage sale or first offense alcohol, period?
For these 3 establishments, it's their first offense ever.
Ever?
The first establishment on the agenda would be Tarasco's. Is there a representative present?
And just a reminder to those coming up to speak, please state your name and your address for our clerk, please.
My name's Vanessa Cabañas, and our address is 1325 Cassville Road. I'm sorry, that's the other location. It's 1350 Joe Frank Harris Parkway, Suite 115.
My name is Jorge Cabañas, represent Tarascos, and it's the same address.
At this point, you will just make whatever statement or request you wish to make before the board.
Okay, we would just ask that if it would be possible for us to get our fine reduced, of course, and the probation. My husband and I were out of town when this happened, and a new employee had been hired, and she was she was in training. We own 3 locations, 2 here in Cartersville and 1 in Canton. This is something that we do take very seriously. I especially go to all the employees on a regular basis, probably every day, and remind them to look at the boards all throughout their locations. We have the signs up with the dates for what age, you know, it should be, like it has the updated date so they know what the driver's license should say. And my rule of thumb is to card everybody. I don't care if they look 20 or 50, it's just safer for me for them to get into that habit. So, anyway, that's, I guess it.
Do y'all have anything else? Are there any questions by any of the members of council or the mayor?
Did you have a management on duty while you were gone?
We did have a management, however, we were under transition at the Tacos and Wings location, which is where this happened at. Our brother, my husband's brother, actually was the manager there, and he had gone out of town for several months to go see his kids, and we had someone else come in who did have experience. However, for whatever reason, it did not work out. And it was the first time we've taken a vacation in 2.5 years, so it was like we came back to this, but it is our first offense, and like I said, we have 2 other locations. We've never had an issue. It's nothing that we take lightly. It's something that we constantly remind our employees to do. When they are hired and we take care of the training, we let them know that, you know, this is mandatory, that they card everyone. So we just have never had a problem before, and when we came back, we were, you know, obviously shocked that this happened.
Is the employee, the server, still employed by you?
She is not.
Other questions?
So your servers attend alcohol compliance seminars that you conduct during your training? And do you do any of your own, do you conduct any of your own internal secret shopper tests just to check for compliance, or do you do just the training?
We do just the training, but I mean, we work pretty closely with all the employees, and it's, you know, something that we watch. And most of our employees have been there for a while and have had a lot of experience. This lady had came on, and she was, you know, young, and I don't know how much, I never met her before because she had started when we were on vacation in July. We went for a week. And so we just, most of our employees have been with us for a while, and they do have experience. So it's just never been an issue for us.
Do you have any signs about ID?
Yes, we do.
Since you never met her, you're sure she had training? I mean, your brother or the person in charge?
Well, yeah, she was actually there for training, because when we came back, we were gonna, you know, make sure that we were pleased with her and everything, but she had only been there for a couple days when this happened, so she was really new. And
So I'm trying to get the chronology. You hired her.
no, we did not hire her. The manager at this location hired her, or let her come in for training, because we were looking for, but it happened while we were gone.
And this was a part-time manager who was transitioning in?
Yes, it was. Someone who worked in another restaurant here in town.
Okay.
But how long have these two restaurants been open?
The one on Cassville Road has been open since 2009 in June, and we opened this location that's in question in August last year. And then we just opened another location in Canton in May of this year.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mayor, do y'all wish to make a motion at this time or me to proceed to the next hearing?
It's really on council.
To proceed.
Okay. Y'all can have a seat or leave, whichever you wish to do.
Okay.
Thank you. The next establishment is Hilton Garden Inn, I believe represented by Mr. Watkins. Oh, and let me state, and I did not say this during my introduction, though it is in the record. All the individual employees were cited and found either pled guilty or were found guilty in city court and did have to pay a fine of $800.
The one serving.
The one serving.
Mr. Lovell, have all the fines been paid as of today by?
For the licenses and for the appeals, yes, they've all been paid. Mr. Watkins, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Jeff Watkins here on behalf of my client, Hilton Garden Inn. With me tonight are two representatives from Hilton Garden Inn that would be happy to answer any questions that I can answer. Hopefully, I will be able to answer any questions that you have. Hilton Garden Inn, as everyone is aware, is downtown here. It's been open for a little over 2 years. It's an asset for the city of Cartersville. Since opening for business, it is policy for Hilton, not just the Hilton Garden Inn, but to provide an orientation training session for all servers that are hired and semi-annual liquor liability training. In this case, this server had that. Unfortunately, this event occurred. The employee was fired immediately the same day. However, we would like to appeal the punishment. We're not here to question or challenge the actual event, the crime. We are here asking the council to reduce the fine as well as, and probably more importantly, reduce the term of the probation. Based on my firsthand knowledge, in the past, the punishment has not been so excessive. And while I do admit that the council, as well as the Alcohol Control Board, has the ability, the power, the option to increase any fines or probation terms as they see fit, we contend that it ought to be based on a graduated scale. The second offense, while an establishment is on probation, is, I believe, according to the ordinance, another 3-year probation, as well as a 30-day suspension of the license and a $3,500 fine. Third offense is $5,000, as well as the option, I guess, for the council to revoke the license as such. Now, given those two, the second and third graduated scale punishments, we contend that the first one should not be so excessive, especially when in the past probation terms have been 3 to 6 months. Fines have been $1,000 or less. While in this case, you are potentially, if you deny the appeal, you are potentially setting up the Hilton Garden Inn to potentially lose their liquor license. And the reason that is, with the 3-year probation, while this establishment can do everything that they possibly can and satisfy everything the city, the local police want done with training, with signs, with every day walking up to the person and say, you've got a card, no matter what. When it gets right down to it, you are resting the ability for this asset here locally, that's an economic engine driver, that's upscale, we're really lucky to have. You are basically resting the ability to serve liquor on the shoulders of typically a young employee Someone that makes $4.50 an hour, God love them, I'm not begrudging that, but you've got to understand, their head may not always be on their job when they come to work. They may have something going on at home. They may have something going on within the workplace. It just may be a bad day. I'm not asking you to excuse what occurred. I'm just asking you to be more reasonable when it comes to this probation term and the fine. More reasonable, that's open to interpretation. But certainly, something that has, I guess, been done in the past is a whole lot more reasonable, I contend, than 3 years and $2,500 fine. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Obviously, you're going to hear this and more from the next establishment that's appealing this. But again, I ask you to consider what you're really trying to accomplish here. Are you trying to set an example? Are you trying potentially to allow this asset to the city of Cartersville to lose their right to serve, to pour, the pouring license? I think that would really hurt us locally. And that 3-year probation could realistically make that happen. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yeah, if we could just go through the mitigation factors again. You talked about the training and semi-annual alcohol refresher courses. Does the Hilton Garden Inn conduct any of its own internal tests to see if its employees are complying, secret shopper, sting operations? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that. I'll be glad to check that before the second hearing. But I would remind Ms. Pruitt that this is a hotel, and I would ask that you bear that in mind. I'm not trying to say the hotel should get preferential treatment over a restaurant, over a bar, but let's face it, typically the people that come in there are people that stay at the hotel, leave their wallet in the room, come down there, have a drink. You've got someone that obviously looked like an adult that was able, I shouldn't say adult, 21 or older, with another adult even older. I don't think the factors that play into a local restaurant or a tavern here in town is the same for that hotel. And I would ask that you take that into consideration also.
And I would just assume, it being a national chain, that there's a written policy for alcohol compliance and control with the chain.
Very much, yes, ma'am.
And is there anything else, any additional evidence, any special programs that we need to be aware of?
Well, I don't know of anything at this point. I think what they've done is...
Mr. Watkins, before you answer her question, you might want to ask the mayor for a recess, because you mentioned a second hearing. I want to remind you, there is not a second hearing. This is your opportunity to make any statements, and if you need to get that information to answer her questions from your clients, I would advise you to do that at this time.
Okay, I'll be glad to. But if I could answer any other questions, there may be something else we need to confer with
Mr.
the
Watkins,
representatives of Hilton.
You mentioned in previous fines and probation hadn't been this high. My question to Mr. Lovell, and maybe to you both, this ordinance was in place when? The date of this ordinance? Do you know?
My recollection, the date of this ordinance would have been probably 2006 or 7. There have been higher fines and there have been much lower fines, as Mr. Watkins has said, on the establishments. You have to remember that each hearing is an individual hearing before the Alcohol Control Board or before y'all, and they take that into consideration in imposing whatever fines or punishments that they decide to give, if any.
And they are up to?
Correct, it's up to.
2,500. Is that right?
That is correct. Are there any other questions for Mr. Watkins? What I'd like to do, instead of a recess, if we could, is just stop the clock on Mr. Watkins. We could move on to the next one to give him a chance to confer with the representatives from Hilton Garden Inn.
That would be fine, Mr. Mayor.
And one other question before you go is just, obviously it's a big establishment, and Hilton as an entity, when these things happen, is it protocol to immediately, let go of the employees?
Yes, sir. Same day.
Okay.
And the employees are aware of that.
Are they required to card everybody?
Are they required to card everyone?
Yeah. I'm just curious.
As a protocol,
Yeah.
I'll have to ask them that.
And I wonder too, and this may not be the place to discuss it, if it would be of any help to the businesses if we required that.
The law doesn't require that.
Yeah, I'm wondering though about a local law that did, and I wouldn't want to put anything in place that would be a hindrance, but if it would be a help.
All right, if you would, please stop the clock on Mr. Watkins.
I have.
Thank you.
All right, Knights, 1899, 1889. Okay. I believe Mr. McCoy is representing them.
I am. Good evening. I'm Lance McCoy, and I'm here with Robert Knight, the owner of Knights. His address is 24 West Main Street. I'm down at 25 East Main Street. It's where my office is located. As Mr. Lovell has indicated to each of you, we're here to appeal the decision from the Alcohol Control Board. Several things I did want to point out that is different in our circumstances. We're the only one that is here tonight that was involved with the State Department of Revenue. And the reason that is different is that city resources weren't involved with this case. You had a state agent that came in. Mr. Knight has already been before the state board, entered a no-low plea before the state board, and was fined by the state board. We just learned today that the fine they're going to impose is a $500 fine. So that's one factor to look at. Another issue, typically when a case like this takes place, the city of Cartersville is asked to join in on the investigation with the state officers. And typically when the city of Cartersville produces a case and makes a case, the establishment would be charged in this circumstance, as well as the actual violator who did the serving. I would like to make a correction because in Mr. Knight's case, the violator, the staff person who made the decision to serve the alcohol, was not issued a citation, did not go to the city of Cartersville, did not impose a fine. The only person that is here suffering the penalty, granted he is the owner of the establishment, is Mr. Knight. Whenever we decided to appeal this, part of the decision-making, part of our thought process was this, and I don't expect an answer, but hypothetically the question that comes to my mind is this: well, what is the purpose of this ordinance? Is it to raise revenue? And so within your mind, if you're looking if it's to raise revenue, then it's automatically $2,500. Of course, the true purpose, and I'll present to you the real purpose of this ordinance, is a deterrence factor. And the deterrence factor comes in this case is you want to deter the serving of underage individuals. So, in my mind, whenever I'm looking at this case, and as Ms. Pruitt has been asking some of the members, she's going to the reference in the code section, the ordinance that was adopted, and that is section 4209 of the city ordinance. And she's asking about the mitigating factors that are contained in subsection F of that section. And what we're here appealing is the fact that we came before the board and we presented our factors. We've written a memo. The memo should be in the documentations that are provided. We submitted our factors, and we asked that the Alcohol Control Board consider the individual merits of our case and distinguish between automatically imposing an automatic $2,500 fine, 3 years probation, and listen to what happened here. What's relevant here? What are some factors that we would ask that you consider in this case? First of all, Mr. Knight's is a local establishment, has been here for 5 years. This June, I believe it was June, it's 5 years of business. No citations, no problems, no issues, no alcohol issues whatsoever. The city sting that took place, when the city stings took place around the same period of time, no violations, no problems. At the Alcohol Control Board meeting, some of the individuals that were cited by the city, for example, I was here for those hearings, did not have the name badges. There were other violations while the alcohol violations or serving was what was presented. Anyway, with that being said, I ask that you consider these factors. You're talking a $2,500 fine for a small locally owned business here in town. What mitigating factors did he take place? What happened here? What does he have and what does he do? Which is what we asked the board to consider. First and foremost, Mr. Knight, this violation occurred about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He was at home recuperating from hernia surgery at the time. One of his employees who was finishing her shift had the state agent that came in, fully bearded, fairly big fella. She served him a beer, left. The manager who was on duty was in the back. The manager then comes out and gets the citation. What actions does Mr. Knight do? What does he confront? What happens? He immediately terminates the employee. What do you do? He terminates the employee because he knows that's the best action to take. She violated his standing policy, and he has reinforced the policy that he has in effect, and this goes to the mitigating factors of subsection F. First and foremost, He individually, because it's a small practice, has discussions with his employees and explains to them what the practice is. His policy, while the law doesn't require it, I've eaten in there before. It's an eating establishment, have some good food, as you can tell I like to eat. But he IDs everyone, that's his policy. He tries to enforce that. Didn't happen this day, but that is what his policy is to ID. He enforces that on his employees. What conducts? He conducts secret shoppers. He has individual friends, whether they be law enforcement or others, come in and try to purchase alcohol, follows up behind them. He can advise you of these other efforts if you want to hear it. He has a sign immediately when you walk in the door, as noted in subsection F, we ID everyone. Other mitigating factors, what procedures does he have in place to monitor? He's usually there. He is typically at the restaurant when it's in service. This is one of those occasions because of his illness, he wasn't. Do we know his policy has worked for the past 5 years? Yes, because he's never had a violation. And quite simply, when it goes back and what we're asking you to do, there are other mitigating factors that are involved here. Mr. Knight will be happy to tell you he fired the employee, the manager, not totally because of this episode, but because of revenue issues, some other issues. The manager is no longer employed there. And Mr. Knight's obviously, if you go there to eat during the afternoon, is in a position where the lunch crowd is not there because he has stopped serving lunch during this period of time. So what I'm trying to present to you, people can throw around $2,500 deterrence pretty easily. But $2,500 for a small business, I am a small business. A $2,500 mandated fine for a small business owner like Mr. Knight is a huge slap in this economy whenever you're trying to make ends meet. And it goes back to the initial question that I asked you, and I would ask that you consider. I asked you to consider the mitigating factors, but I asked for you to consider the purpose. In his case, which is different than the other cases that were presented, the person who actually committed the violation is terminated. No action is taken on her license. I don't know where she is. For all I know, she is working with her license that is issued by the city of Cartersville in another establishment here in town, serving alcohol. So, deterrence. In this case, he has done everything he can possibly do. Terminated the employee, reinforced his policy, and he's there. What I'm asking you to do is to consider those mitigating factors, put the mitigating factors to work, and look at the purpose on deterrence. What is gained by a $2,500 fine and an additional $500 fine that he's already paid the state, I would add. What I'm asking you to do, flat out, to me, $500 is a lot of money. I know typically there's 1,000, there's 25. If you read the ordinance and you look at the ordinance, and this is under 4209 subsection C, and the part that kind of interests me when I read that ordinance, how it is written, it says for violations within a 3rd-year period involving the same licensee. So what I would say is it doesn't say for a violation within a 3-year period, it says violations. And it puts the word plural. Y'all can look at it yourself. Violations, and then you look at 3-year period violations, and then you look at the first, and you look at $2,500. The fact of the matter is, y'all can find how you want to, but I would present to you, when you have somebody with a first ever violation, and they aren't the one who did the serving, and the server isn't held accountable, $2,500 is a steep fine. 3 years probation is steep. I'm asking that you consider the $500 he's already paid to the state, he found out today the fee, and that you fine him a $500 fee. I think that's reasonable. I think it serves the purpose. I think it reinforces what he's already doing. And I would ask on the probation for a 3-year period, I would ask that you impose a 1-year period of probation. And the factual matter is, if there's any other violation within 3 years, then you get back into the subsection and anything can be done. But, I mean, what I look at it, I don't know how many of y'all have kids, but I'm linking an employee to a kid. And so when you have your children at home, you can talk to them and you can tell them what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to act. And once they leave and they do what you didn't tell them, what can you do other than punish or spank them? So, I mean, what you're basically doing here is you have the parent who's doing the punishment, and then the parent is the one going in and getting spanking. And so I would ask that you have that in consideration, and I would ask that you mitigate this fine. Thank you for your attention. We're open for questions.
Any questions?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Watkins, if you would, you have 5 minutes and 9 seconds
In answer
left.
to the first question about, for lack of a better word, shoppers, they do not have that. They have shoppers overall for the hotel, but nothing that is focused on, specifically focused on the serving of alcohol. In regard to a hotel-wide policy, their policy is to card everyone. I think that was it.
Mayor, I think I have a question, Mr. Knight.
Okay, Mr. Knight, please step forward for a question, please.
Robert, do you have a manual, a written manual that is available for employees? Is it a verbal kind of a?
It's a verbal. It's every day. I tell everyone, what do? I ask them. We ID everyone. Some of you have been in there before. We ID everyone, regardless of age. If my mom walks in, she gets ID'd. She may not like it, but that's our policy.
But there's nothing written, but you say to them at shift change or?
When we have a new employee come in, we make it very clear, and it's inside their application packet, everything that's hired in, that they do. They're very aware that we ID everyone, and we do that we reinforce that with our secret shopper program and friends that come in and do that.
Now, at 3 o'clock, was the young woman already off duty, or was it a transition time?
Yes, she was. She got off duty at 1 o'clock, and she was sitting there waiting on a ride to come home. Rachel was the manager on duty. She's the bartender during that time. She's in charge of the entire restaurant. Business had gotten extremely slow during that time. We were down to one server. She did everything. It takes a very strong server to do that. Rachel was handling a party of 12 that was in the back that came in unexpectedly. Had a few people at the front of the restaurant, a couple people at the bar. The gentleman walked in the front, sat down. I've already expressed my concern with how the customers, you have to serve customers. You have to get, you always have to be there. Don't let them wait. Welcome the Knights. What can I get you? Can I do something? This girl's off the clock. She gets up from her booth that she was sitting at, having a late lunch, went behind the bar, asked, what can I get you? The gentleman ordered an alcoholic beverage. She turned around to get it for him, had some money to give to her. She said, your server will be, Rachel should be here in a minute. And he's like, well, let me go ahead and pay for this. I need to take this telephone call and we'll step outside. He steps outside, never does return. The beverage is never touched, still sitting there where it was at the entire time. The employee, she leaves. Later, about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes later, the Georgia Department of Revenue agent comes into the building, walks in. It's not uncommon for us to serve law enforcement personnel. Rachel's happy. She's like, hey, welcome to the Knights. What can I get you? I need to serve you a citation. She said, for what? She ever knew the gentleman was even at the bar. That's how quickly the guy was in and out.
So did I hear you correctly that she had been off duty for 2 hours, 1 to 3? And then she was just hanging around and eating lunch?
Yes.
And then she just got up to help?
She got up to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor. Chief, I've got a question for you. How often do we go in and do these stings? I know that, we've heard people have been open for a year, 6 months, 5 years. How often are we honestly doing this? I mean, obviously we don't want to tell them, hey, we're coming in on Thursday, March 3rd, and be ready. But how often are we doing this?
I believe the last time we did one citywide was 2008, may have been 2007. I was looking at some records recently, so it's been a few years. We try not to do it all the time because we understand the impact that can have on business, but as we are in the regulatory end of things in government, we do them periodically, and we try to do them as random as possible without.
The last time you did one of these, did you have this many violators?
I don't recall how many violations we had. It was probably fairly close. I think this is a very low percentage, which I think is something that the city can be pleased with, that it is such a low percentage based on the total number of places checked.
The last time we did a full undercover operation, we actually had less pouring establishments, but that operation also included package establishments, and we had numerous package establishments. So there was actually more total, but less pouring establishments. And the department also does conduct operations when they receive complaints or hear words on the street that an establishment might be serving underage, then they'll do a special operation relative to those as well.
I guess, Chief, I'll just ask for your opinion on this. You might not want to give it, but do you feel as though we have a problem with serving underage, in the city as a whole? This to you, you just said, was small, but do you feel as though this is something we need to do more often?
You get arguments either way. I think we're fortunate that we don't have a lot of problems with this. The problems the continuing problems reside in the same location quite often, which speaks to some degree, is the punishment really the deterrent that we hoped it would be? I think it's dependent on the straightforward business owners to do all that they can, and I think maybe the city can help by, I know the question's been asked about training policies. Maybe the city should consider being the one that establishes the written policy so that there's no question about what is being trained and how it's being presented to people, and kind of step in and be the partner with these businesses like that to help encourage that side of the business in economic times. I think it would be my opinion, it would be beneficial to the city, but that's not a decision I make. As far as doing them more often, I don't think we need to do this more often. I think we do it enough to put the regulatory hammer, if you will, out there. I don't mean that we're attacking anyone. You need that regulation, that sort of Damocles hanging over you from time to time, as there is everywhere in a number of things. But we're fortunate that we don't have a lot of problems, and that the problems typically do reside in the individual that serves that, and not necessarily in a pattern that we see in a business owner. It's typically an individual lack of effort.
Okay, thank you.
Chief,
Excuse me? Wayne?
were you surprised that DOR didn't notify our local police jurisdiction? Were you surprised?
Yeah, usually revenue says something. I was quite surprised to find out that they come in and taking care of business without even so much as a courtesy call saying that we had done this operation. It's just typically a courtesy that's extended from one agency to another.
And you don't know what the trigger for that was? You haven't heard to this day?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That was my question also, because it looks rather strange with all these people that under the same time period, underage person. I've been sitting here 8 years, and I haven't seen this many at one time. And I've been in the same place that the separate person that came up many years ago. I was the license holder for the American Legion. And we had a guy that was opened up on Sunday, me not knowing anything about it, so they had my presence on the carpet. I know how you feel about that. But I don't, seem like to me, I hate to say it like it's a conspiracy against Cartersville.
Well, I hope that's not the case.
Was the person from the Department of Revenue, did he go in alone, or was it someone from the police department accompanying him?
No, well, there was no coordination between Department of Revenue, and I tried to call the agent and couldn't get in touch with him. So I don't know what their motivation was. I don't know why they picked here, if it was just a, name out of the hat that they drew.
The city's made numerous attempts to get more information from the Department of Revenue regarding this particular operation, and they have been very uncooperative in providing really any information. They frankly wouldn't even tell us what they were going to find in the establishments when we asked them that question as well.
I have a question for Keith, I guess, and it's really important to me, is we didn't have any repeat offenders from 07 or 08-ish.
That is correct.
What was the punishment then?
If my memory is correct, I believe the fine amount was about $1,250 or $1,500 for most of those establishments, with a 1 to 3 year probation, depending upon the circumstances that the Alcohol Control Board heard. I don't recall the maximum fines being levied back then. the maximum recommendation fines being levied.
But not on the package side, just on the serving side.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I gathered this particular employee, unlike others, was not mandated to go to court.
No, since we were not involved in the particular operation, the city did not issue a citation to that individual. We found out about, actually, I'll be honest, we found out about the operation because Mr. Knight called me and informed me that the Department of Revenue had conducted an operation at his location. Without him calling, I don't know when the city would have found out about the operation. Or if, yes.
I guess, Keith, what I'm having a hard time determining is when the ordinance was in place in 2006 or 07, whenever this ordinance took place,
Mm-hmm.
the council imposed certain requirements for license holders to uphold.
Yes.
And between now and then, as Chief so said, we have had less problems.
Correct.
So how do you determine whether it is a revenue generator or a deterrent generator? I mean, if you look at it from the perspective that we haven't had many problems, then yes, the fines that were imposed or the possibility of the fines in probation have made a difference, in my opinion.
In
So
my
I don't know
opinion,
how
though, I definitely would not want, and I would imagine Matt would agree, I don't see it as
Don't go there with me.
I definitely don't see any fines or penalties as revenue generators for the city. I mean, that's not what we're about. So it's not, it's more trying to use that number or that figure as a deterrent. But we definitely understand from the economy, in regards to the money, it's more of a deterrent in addition to the, probationary period.
Well, the truth of the matter is, we feel strongly about underage drinking.
Yeah.
And so the fine is there to make sure that everyone in the city understands, young people and businesses, that we feel strongly about it.
Does Mr. Watkins still have some time left
No.
in his card?
All public hearings are closed unless you wish to hear from someone
I'll allow
else.
Mr.
Mayor.
Watkins to
Thank you,
approach.
Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Keith. I may be misspoken because I try to concentrate when Keith's talking because it's always, it's so interesting and I don't know if I heard exactly what he said.
Hike up your pant legs and make your point.
All right. The argument is if the last time in 07, 08, whatever it was, if penalties were between $0 and $500, maybe a little more, probation maybe a year to 3 years, and we haven't had a repeat offender since then the argument is you don't need to increase the fines to $2,500 and the probation term to 3 years. It worked when it was much lower. Well, that's,
Well, if that's the
I think
case,
that's a
why-
logical.
Well,
think that's a logical
I would say this, that the ordinance that's put in place that allows for a maximum penalty was put in place by council, and we've got a board, the Alcohol Control Board, that hears these types of things and has the discretion to do that. So
You also have an appeal process for y'all to be involved and look and see if something's excessive, and we're continuing to
deeply aware of that
excessive.
tonight.
To answer the questions, back when we adopted this ordinance and this particular fine structure and plan, basically the direction that we had from council at that time was we took a survey of all the surrounding communities. I mean, basically south of Atlanta, north of Atlanta, Dalton, Athens, I mean, everywhere. And we got all their numbers and we averaged it out and we presented that information to council, and then council said, we think this is the best tier schedule of all of these going up there. And council at that time did not want to have a fixed fine because I think, as I think Lori said and several others have said, there are circumstances that every case is different. We want to have a maximum fine, and y'all leave it up to the Alcohol Control Board to determine what that should be on the cases now, and y'all have the right to review their decisions to determine if y'all feel it was appropriate or not. And that's basically what they're asking y'all to do today.
When was the Alcohol Control Board established?
Right around the same time as this ordinance. believe.
06, 07.
Jack, you've been on it, what, 6 years now? Would that be about right? Yeah. So about 6 years.
Do I remember correctly that in the beginning, the cases came directly to us?
Absolutely.
Yes, they came directly to y'all. We had a night where we had, I believe it's probably the one I'm remembering, we had 11 violations, and y'all had 11 hearings. We started at 7 p.m., we finished right at midnight, and after that meeting, I believe Sam Smith was still the mayor, and I was directed to, not in 07, but this particular meeting, we were directed to look at other alternatives for the mayor and council not to have to review these. And as a result of that direction from him, we ended up with an alcohol control board, which the mayor and council, I think he wasn't even on when they actually was adopted, ended up setting up and establishing. Yeah, it would have been under Mike when it was probably actually established.
Now, Keith, at the time, we looked at all of those different surrounding cities and counties. Didn't we take the medium range on the up to?
Yes, that was y'all's, what y'all did basically.
In other words, 40 or 50% were greater than us, and
Yeah.
some of that's what I didn't.
Okay, any other discussion or points of clarifications or comments for any of those, or questions for any of those that are appealing this evening? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close that item. There's nothing to add to the agenda, and I'm going to make the safe assumption, is there anybody else that's come to council tonight to address council for any particular reason? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Yeah. So move.
Adjourned. Get a rump out of that guy.
Huh?
You don't watch that ball.
That's my game.